Thank you for joining us. In this episode from Season 6 of Open Minds, Regina and her guests discuss a practical approach to soulmates. Relationship expert Arielle Ford unravels the mystery of the sacred contracts between soulmates and how they can work together to stay together. We invite you to watch this full hour-long episode on Gaia.com, where you can continue your search for truth and discover a wide range of topics within the 8 seasons of this ongoing series. We have thousands of exclusive on-demand videos to explore perspectives that you won't find in the mainstream.
The sad fact is that more than half of all first marriages dissolve in the harsh reality of our own lack of understanding of what it takes to make it work. While we're chemically wired to fall in love, when those chemicals wear off, we're not as well equipped to stay together. Arielle Ford's new book, Turn Your Mate into Your Soulmate, goes into the study of how people who stay together do it. So I guess we're going to learn from them. And you're becoming one of them.
I am.
Late to the game, everyone has their own time and season, but nonetheless, you're learning to make it work. And
Absolutely.
Well, let's start out with that part of the conversation, because that's not how you were naturally wired.
No, it was pretty unpredictable that I'd be sitting here in this chair today talking to you about this subject. I was a first-time bride at 44. And I did not grow up in a home with two people who really loved each other. I grew up with parents who actually hated each other, and I have no conscious memory of them actually ever holding hands or kissing or being affectionate. But when I got married, what I quickly discovered, in sort of a very shocking manner, was that I had no partnership skills. I was really, really good at being the boss. I was used to running a business, but I had no clue how to be a good partner. And I quickly decided that I needed to become a student of love, that I had manifested this awesome soulmate, this incredible guy. He exceeded all my expectations, and I was blowing it. So that's sort of the beginning of the story.
Yes, and you know, we teach best what we need to learn, right? I mean, that's, wow.
You teach what you need to learn most. And,
Yeah.
and still, 18 years later, I have learned a lot, and I have a lot of tools and tricks in my emotional toolkit. And still, the thing that I found is that even understanding certain issues and knowing how to navigate them doesn't make them go away. It's a daily practice of choosing to love.
Yes.
And choosing to be loving. Because I was one of these people, like a lot of people, I thought love was just a feeling. I thought, okay, well, when I'm feeling love, that's how I know that I'm in love. And when you're married and you've taken sacred vows and you've made this commitment to another human being, even if they're your soulmate, there are days, weeks, maybe months when you don't even like them very much. And then you have to choose. Love is a behavior. Love is a commitment. Love is a choice. Love is a decision. And it's work. It really is work. And I thought, oh, I'm with my soulmate. It must mean it's going to be easy.
Yeah, happily ever after.
Yeah, right? Well, thank God for happily even after.
Yeah, that's true. That's a
Yeah.
good point. And you know, it's interesting. I've looked around and throughout my life at people who seem to naturally be adept at making their relationship work. And I actually have only seen a couple. Honestly, if I am being honest, and I am, I've only seen a couple people, and one of them is a woman who is a former sister-in-law of mine, whose birthday is February 14th, Valentine's Day, and this woman just has a type of grace and enthusiasm for life, where she married someone that was her polar opposite, the ballerina cowboy syndrome thing, and had 6 children. And every day still remains a creative endeavor that she is solely responsible for in terms of being the glue of that family and that love affair. And it's still a love affair.
Yeah.
But that's the only person I've seen that's really just known how to do it somehow.
It's rare. You know, I have a lot of friends that are married to their soulmate, and they still have to work at the relationship because there's so much that we come in, and I really believe soulmates come in together with sacred contracts to be together. You know, there's past life stuff, and there's karma, and there's choices that we make in between lives. Okay, yeah, let's be soulmates in this next lifetime, and let's set up these synchronicities so we recognize each other. And let's work out the fact that in the 3 past lives you betrayed me, and we're going to have betrayal issues, and we're going to have so many kids together. But we forget all that. We meet them, we fall in love, we're in this euphoric state. We're in what I call the socially acceptable form of insanity, because the dopamine and the adrenaline, the oxytocin's all kicking off. And it's great for 6 to 18 months until all the chemistry goes away. And suddenly this person with which you had such frequency and synchronicity with is just a real human being.
Yeah, see, I've always viewed that as the hook, as the soul's hook.
Yes.
The means of drawing people together for either something very lovely, creative, and pleasurable, or for learning, which may feel the opposite of that. Both are equally as valuable. But that chemical cascade, I do believe, is a projection from the soul to say, don't go away, stay here. It's a trick to keep you together long enough to establish some other bond so that you can dig down and start doing your thing together.
Exactly, yes.
So it can be tricky, because a lot of times, like when you say the chemicals wear off, it's, what was I thinking? Well, you weren't. It wasn't your choice.
It had nothing to do with rational thought.
No,
but it's an important piece of it, because
yes.
soulmates come together to heal each other on the deepest level.
We hope you are enjoying this YouTube podcast episode of Open Minds Season 6. Follow your curiosity into Gaia.com. Search for more answers. Discover more conversations on some of life's biggest mysteries. Gaia.com offers ad-free streaming of thousands of exclusive and original videos. Become a member and watch as we empower the evolution of consciousness.
Soulmates come together to heal each other on the deepest level. And as anybody interested in personal growth knows, the healing part sucks. It doesn't feel good. It's not fun. It's often painful. Harville Hendrix, who Oprah calls the marriage whisperer, he's one of the world's leading marriage researchers. And we were talking about this one day, and I said to him, Harville, how do you know if you're in the right relationship? And he started laughing. And when he stopped laughing, he said, you know you're in the right relationship when it starts off as a dream come true and eventually devolves into your worst nightmare.
Exactly. I think that's my observation and my experience as well, in that if you didn't have that chemical cascade saying, oh my God, this is just amazing, there is no incentive to stick in with the situation.
Right. And you know, you're in that state. Water tastes wetter.
Yes.
Air smells sweeter.
Yeah.
Everything feels so good. And then it goes away, and there's this big disappointment. Oh, does this mean I don't love him anymore? She doesn't love me anymore. But the truth is, all of those chemicals are still there. They're now covered up with reality. And the reason I wrote Turn Your Mate into Your Soulmate was to show you how to reignite those chemicals, to get those feelings back, and to re-envision the relationship that you have. Because as you said in the intro, everybody knows that 50% of first marriages end in divorce. What most people don't know is that 64% of second marriages
and it's
73% of third marriages end in divorce.
Yeah.
So if you're looking like the problem's over there, that's not true, because the person who's in all 3 marriages is you.
And as we'll discover later, maybe it's not even a problem. So let's start out with your definition of soulmate, because that means different things to different people.
Yeah, it's true. So my definition of a soulmate is that it's first and foremost somebody you can completely be yourself with, somebody with whom you share unconditional love, and when you look into their eyes, you have the experience of being home. And if you accept that definition, then I want to expand it even further, because we're going to be talking about romantic soulmates today. But your kids, your parents, your siblings, your coworkers, your best friend, your cat, your dog, all are also soulmates if they fit that definition. And to take it even a step further than that, I would also say a soulmate is somebody that you feel emotionally and physically safe with. So if you're in a relationship where there's abuse, extreme addiction, or really bad behavior, I can't help you. This is why God invented therapists. You need professionals. But for anybody else who's bored, disappointed, frustrated, upset with the mate that they have, I promise you, if you're willing to sit with us for a little while longer and take some baby steps, it's definitely possible to rediscover the love and the passion and the fun.
Okay, so this is bringing a couple of questions up. One, we tend to circulate within a given incarnation with a soul tribe. So anytime we run into the members of that soul tribe, it has that soul mate kind of feeling,
Yes.
whether it's a family member, friend, lover, or whatnot.
The recognition.
Right? The recognition. So that, by virtue of that alone, we're falling into karmic patterns, incarnation patterns.
Yes.
So that's where that recognition, so when people have that instant recognition, you can pretty much guess you have been traveling together before.
But the mistake a lot of people make is they feel that connection, that recognition, and if it's if there's chemistry and there's some sexuality there, they leap to the conclusion, oh, this must be my life partner.
Exactly, and that is not necessarily true.
Right, because in order to have a sustainable, happy marriage, you need more than the recognition, more than the chemistry. You need communication, connection, compatibility, and most importantly, a shared vision for the future. You know, if you're somebody like me who loves to travel the world and wants exotic travel, and I fall in love with you, and you're an agoraphobic, we are not going to be happy together. You know?
Right.
So this is why it's so important that you could, lock eyes across a crowded room. You're the one. But don't get married tomorrow. Spend a good solid year dating and getting to know them. And are they your lifelong partner? Do they have that potential?
Whatever it is between you may well be cleared within that year.
Yes.
Acknowledged and cleared within that year. You don't have to go through a marriage to figure that one out
Exactly,
necessarily.
because sometimes it's just you come together for a reason or a season or a lifetime.
Let's talk about another situation that I think probably everybody watching, most people at least, have had happen, where you're somewhere and you meet a total stranger for about 15 minutes. And it's like you know everything about that person. There's absolute unconditional love there, everything. But it's really nothing more than just a passing moment.
It is, and that's what it is. And sometimes we have to accept it, and yet people will spend years pining for it. Oh, I met him, but he got on the train and he got away.
I think there's a James Blunt song. I think it was James Blunt about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And the truth is that's because we live with the myth that we each only get one big love in a lifetime.
And we're going to go into that. Okay, let's go back for a moment to give us a little bit of the more technical definitions of these chemical cascades and the phases we go through so people can see themselves and their relationships in that.
Dr. Helen Fisher, who's one of the leading researchers and anthropologists on love, has sort of outlined the whole phases of, where you have this infatuation and then you go into lust and then that's when all the chemicals are going off and then eventually you go into reality. But what she's been able to do is she can take people and put them in a CAT scan machine and ask them questions about their relationship, and by looking at the CAT scan, tell you whether or not you're still in love, because different parts of the brain will light up. The thing about that is that you could be in the CAT scan today and not be in love, but she could retest you in 3 months and you could be in love again. So that's why we can't trust our feelings when it comes to love. Somebody asked me the other day, well, how do I know if he loves me? And I said, well, I can only speak from my point of view, how I know Brian loves me. I know he loves me because when I injure myself, and I'm a klutz, it happens often, I can see the concern in his eyes. And he'll ask me right away, are you okay? And he'll come and help me off the floor or whatever crazy thing that I've done. Or if I'm having, if I'm losing it, which I do on occasion, completely melt down and lose it, he'll sit me down and he'll hold my hands and he'll remind me what I teach. Oh, everything already is okay. The problem's already been solved. We're in this together. We're going to figure this out together.
That's a very generous, loving gesture.
Exactly.
Yes.
Now, for other people, they don't feel loved unless they're getting roses and candy and cards, which is why I love that book, The 5 Love Languages.
Yes.
Because everybody
It shows it differently.
Like for me, if you are being affectionate and touching me, that's how I feel love. You know, I have other friends that need gifts. For Brian, it's acts of service and affection. So
it's a good fit.
yeah, there's a guy named Dr. Gary Chapman. He wrote this great book, The 5 Love Languages. I highly recommend anybody in any kind of relationship read this book.
Yes.
It's awesome, yeah.
And we look at the difference between male and female and what we need from each other. And one of the points you make in your book is that men tend to, and these are blanket statements, but tend to value being respected by the woman even more than being loved by the woman. Let's talk about that.
Yes, actually, men crave respect more than sex. And most women don't know that.
No.
They need respect and they need appreciation. And I had a really funny conversation with my hairdresser the other day because he was, you know, he's doing my hair and I'm going off on book tour and I tell him about the book and I know that he's divorced and I said to him, "Why did you get divorced?" He said, "Car keys." It's like, what? He said, "Car keys, really?" He said, "My wife and I started this salon together, but she used to leave before me. And 3 out of 7 days, she would take my car keys with her, which meant that I had to be at the salon an hour longer than necessary while she brought me back my car keys. And she would never apologize, and she never realized how inconsiderate she was. So honestly, we got divorced over car keys." So then I said to him, "Tell me about the best day of your marriage." And he lights up and he said, "I can tell you every detail." He goes, we were 3 years into having our business open. We were driving on the 8. We were near the Claremont exit. And she turned to me and she said, "Tom, I am so proud of you. You've done such a great job of making our business a success. And you are such a good dad. And I know I don't say it often enough, but I really love you." And I said, "Okay, tell me about the worst day of your marriage." He said, "I remember like it was yesterday. We were driving down the 8. We were in the exact same spot. We were near the Claremont exit, and the recession had just started, and our business was failing. And she was screaming at me, telling me what an idiot I was, that I couldn't fix the business in the middle of the recession. And that was the end of our marriage."
Yeah.
And I thought, what a telling story. The thing he remembers and values most was the love and appreciation and acknowledgement. And the thing that killed the marriage was the lack of respect.
Yes. Yes.
Because men need to win, and we need to set them up to win. And here's the thing a lot of people don't know. A man can't be happy unless his woman's happy. And I can hear the women in the audience saying, "But I tell him all the time what I need to be happy." And my answer to them is, yes, and you're shaming and blaming, screaming, yelling, bitching, moaning. And when you do that, he's not listening. He can't hear you. You become mommy, and he tunes you out. But there is a way to get all your needs and desires met, but it requires a really sweet tone of voice, and you have to tell him what it's going to provide for him. So I have an example. I have a story to share about why this really works. So I can't tell you how many women tell me the thing that drives them nutty about their husband is that they have to constantly remind them to take the trash out. So here's how you get him to take the trash out. The next time he does take the trash out, even if you had to remind him, when he walks back in the door, walk over to him, give him a big hug, and then whisper in his ear, "You are my hero. I am so grateful to you for taking out that stinky, smelly trash. I can't stand touching it. You have no idea what it does for me and how sexy it is when you take the trash out." If you do that, he's never, ever going to forget to take the trash out again. He just had this big win. Now, the opposite to that, the way women end up really having men lose all the time, and this may come as a surprise, is that anytime you put yourself down to your guy, he's losing. Why? Because he chose you. And if you're saying,
it diminishes both of you.
yeah, I've got too many wrinkles, I've got cellulite, I need to lose 50 pounds. In any way that you're making yourself smaller, he's losing.
Yeah, that makes sense. In fact, I did this little pilot show on men and love, and it was myself guiding the panel of 3 men of different age groups. One was from Europe, the other 2 were American. And what was interesting was at the very end of the program, I said, what I think I'm hearing here is that in the end, it sounds like you need women more than we need you. And they said almost simultaneously, yes, we're here to serve you.
Yes.
And no one, starting the conversation, I wouldn't have suspected that. And again, this goes back into the archetypal energy of being the hero, needing to be the hero, or you wouldn't incarnate as male.
Right.
Incarnate as a female if you don't need that. And so, if you're looking along these lines, if we're constantly making someone wrong and diminishing ourselves, that takes away the potential to be the hero, which is a very natural state of being.
Yeah, and the other thing that a lot of women do is they give too much, and they don't raise the bar for the guy.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
I tend to be kind of more in that category of just flowing energy out and being an enabler. Oh, don't worry, sweetie, it was tough, don't be so hard on yourself. Wrong.
No, they want to win. They want to prove themselves.
Right.
So you got to raise the bar for them. What could they do for you?
Right.
And let them know. And then, like I said, it's the tone of voice and it's the way that you say it. And you only want to make one request at a time.
Right.
One. Or one question at a time.
Don't lay down a manifesto.
Right. We can multitask. We can handle multiple things at a time. They cannot. Their brains are wired differently. So if you have a question, ask one question and then shut up and give them all the time they need to answer the question. Or if you have a request, make one very clear request, that they can think about and answer. Or you can tell them, you don't have to tell me right now, you can tell me in a couple of days, but I'm really thinking it might be fun next weekend that we go, skiing up in Snowmass.
But don't overwhelm someone with your list.
Right.
And no less in a nasty tone of voice or a blaming tone of voice that's going to kill the relationship.
Exactly.
So I think we've got that part. So now let's go to past lives.
Okay.
How do you define it when someone has recognized someone from a past life scenario?
Well, I believe that the past, the present, and the future are all happening right now. So we can talk about it as a past life, but it's really more like a parallel life. But as we talked about earlier, we have a tribe, and we have recognition when we connect with our tribe. And I do believe when we're planning to hook up in a particular lifetime with a soulmate, that we go to a place that they call recognition school. And we plan out the coincidences and the synchronicities so that we can recognize each other. We can fall into nature's trick and be crazy in love and see this so that we can get together and grow and heal each other as a couple. So I think that's an important piece of it. And you do not have to believe in any of this to manifest a soulmate.
Right, absolutely.
It's just my personal belief.
Okay, now I was going to have you tell us about Donna Eden and her mate, but I want to get into some of the more functional aspects of this. If we have time, we'll go back to Donna, because what she and her husband David represented is irreconcilable differences.
Yes.
And there are many reasons people come together. Sometimes they come together to create or produce something, whether it's a child, whether it's a pottery shop or a spiritual school, whatever. They're here for purpose together. Right. It doesn't mean it's going to be the easiest ride.
Well, there's a guy named Dr. John Gottman who's a marriage researcher at the University of Washington. And he's just a total genius. He can observe any couple for 15 minutes and tell you within 93% accuracy whether or not they'll be divorced in 3 years.
Yes.
And what his studies have found is that every couple, not just some, but every couple has a minimum of 9 irreconcilable differences. These are things on which you are never, ever going to agree on. So knowing that, then how do you coexist? with respect and love and appreciation for each other, and learning how to communicate well, and learning how to create what he calls creative solutions. So one example of that also came from Harville Hendrix, because we were having this conversation one day, and I said, well, creative solutions, that sounds like a good idea. Give me a concrete example. He said, I've got one for you. He said, my idea of the perfect day is to get behind the wheel of a vehicle and then drive for 8 or 9 hours. Helen, his wife and partner, her idea of the perfect day is to stay home and do needlepoint or knitting. Now, these are two very different things. I said, well, how did you solve that one? And he started to laugh, and he said, we bought an RV. I'm always driving, and she's always home knitting.
Right.
You know, so it
Right.
requires some effort. You
Yeah,
know,
that's
how
creative.
can we
That's
both?
good.
And
Yeah.
it's not a compromise,
No.
right? I don't like compromise, because you both lose in a
Yeah.
compromise.
Yeah.
But there are ways for everybody to win. And sometimes it's simple as learning to grow a generous heart. So I've always, I hate to use the word hated, but hated sports on TV. That was like a thing I never ever wanted to do. In fact, it was part of my whole deal breaker thing. I was not going to marry a guy who watched football on TV. So I marry a former basketball player. I didn't know about basketball. Now, he loves basketball. His whole family loves basketball. I never even knew what basketball was. But I thought, you know, this has been a big part of his entire life. Maybe I could just watch the last quarter of a game with him when it's important to him. And so I started to do that, and I still didn't like it, and I still didn't get it, until one day I'm watching the last quarter of a game, and I notice that this really short guy is making all the points. And I said to Brian, who's that short guy? He said, oh, that's Avery Johnson. He's one of the best players in the NBA. And then the light bulb went off, and I thought, I'm going to always cheer for the shortest guy on any team. And that's how I got skin in the game, and that's how I learned to love basketball, because it was important to him. Now, for Brian, he's a movie buff. He loves movies, and he likes really serious intellectual movies. My favorite movie of all time is Legally Blonde. Okay, I like stupid, funny movies. So he grew a generous heart by always taking me to any movie I want to go to, even though he'd never go alone to see Beverly Hills Chihuahua, another favorite of mine. But that's what you do. You learn to love what your beloved loves.
Right. Let's talk about some of the, this is Dr. Gottman again, kind of deal killers. And that is criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling.
Yes, he calls them the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
Yes.
So when he's observing a couple, one of the things he looks for, if either party is rolling their eyes, that is a sign of contempt.
Yes,
That the
very
marriage,
disrespectful.
and that the marriage isn't going to work.
Yeah.
So if your partner is being super defensive, or they're stonewalling you and they're refusing to engage, that's when you know you need to go to therapy. Reading a book is not going to fix this. You need to be with a professional who can guide you through it. You know, on the other piece of it, another piece of Gottman's amazing research is that he noticed the couples that do really well always practice what he calls bidding. So when you turn your body towards your partner and you look them in the eyes, you are bidding them. You are putting your presence and attention on them. And they know it and they can feel it. And another thing I just learned yesterday is that as you're doing this, if you're looking into their left eye, then you're connecting on the heart level.